Welcome to Monk's Temple. As you settle into this moment, allow the outside world to soften its edges, to recede into a gentle haze. Let the weight of your day dissolve into the space around you. Here, we are not gathering information or collecting techniques. We are cultivating a way of being. We are nurturing an inner quiet from which true seeing can blossom. This practice is ancient, rooted in the profound stillness of the Buddha's own awakening. A recognition that to understand another, you must first understand the nature of your own gaze. You must learn to look without wanting, to listen without waiting, to be present without projecting. I will begin with a story from a time when I understood none of this. I was young, traveling through the high desert, my mind a storm of seeking. I came upon a solitary potter, her hands deep in a spinning wheel of clay. For hours I watched, mesmerized by the rising form. Finally, she stopped the wheel and looked at the wobbly, imperfect vessel. Without a word, she collapsed it back into a formless lump. I gasped. Why? After all that work? She looked at me, her eyes the color of the desert sky at dusk. The clay was not ready, she said simply. It had a whisper of resistance in it. A memory of being something else. If I had forced the shape, the pot would hold water, but it would always carry a hidden fault line. It would not be true. She began to knead the clay again, a slow, rhythmic, patient pressing. To see the true nature of the clay, she said, you must feel for what it is, not what you wish it to be. You must listen to its silence. That potter, in her dusty workshop, taught me the foundational principle of all understanding, right view. It is seeing the thing itself, free from the distortion of your own desires, fears, or expectations. Her hands were not just shaping clay. They were in a deep, non-verbal dialogue with its essence. Before we can understand the people around us, we must learn to knead our own awareness into a state of receptive, patient neutrality. We must collapse our premature conclusions and return to the formless lump of pure, non-judgmental attention. If this practice of patient, deep attention calls to you, I warmly invite you to subscribe to Monk's Temple. It is a gesture of joining a community that values stillness, a way to return to this well of quiet wisdom together. Now, let us begin our cultivation in the most profound place of all, the space before interpretation. We begin with the sanctuary of stillness, becoming a clear mirror. In a world that prizes broadcasting, the Buddha's path teaches the supreme discipline of reception. This is not passivity. It is the most active state of being, full, alert, luminous presence. Your mind must become like a mountain lake at dawn, utterly still, so perfectly clear that it reflects the sky, the trees, the passing bird with flawless accuracy. If the water is churned by wind, the winds of your own thoughts, judgments, and internal chatter, the reflection is shattered. You see only fragments, distortions. Your first and most important task is to calm the waters of your own mind. This calm awareness is the prerequisite for everything that follows. It allows you to discern what is them and what is a reflection of you. It is the practice the Buddha called sati, mindfulness. In the context of understanding others, mindfulness has one essential function: it creates a gap. A sacred pause between the stimulus of another person's behavior and your own reactive mind. In that gap, choice resides. In that gap, true perception is possible. Without this stillness, you are not reading another person. You are reading your own biography projected onto them. If you are feeling insecure, a neutral glance becomes a dismissal. If you are angry, a calm tone feels like condescension. Your own emotional weather paints the sky of every interaction. Mindfulness is the practice of stepping back from the weather, of finding the silent, observing sky that holds the weather without being it. Let me share an original story. Early in my monastic life, I was assigned to assist a visiting master known for his stern demeanor. For a week, I lived in a state of low-grade anxiety, interpreting his every silence as disapproval, his every direct instruction as criticism. My mind was a whirlwind of stories. He finds me lacking. I am not good enough. One morning, as I fumbled while serving his tea, I spilled a few drops. I braced for a reprimand. He looked at the small spill, then at my tense, frightened face. He said softly, "You are so busy listening to the critic you have placed in my chair, you cannot hear the tea kettle singing, or feel the warmth of the bowl in your hands." In that moment, the projection shattered. I saw him clearly, not a stern judge, but a teacher offering a precise, compassionate correction. The sternness was my own fear, reflected back at me through the distorted mirror of my anxious mind. My mindfulness had been absent. I was not seeing him, I was seeing my own ghost. He taught me that the first person you must learn to read with clarity is yourself. From this foundation of inner stillness, we can now extend our awareness outward, into the realm of the unspoken symphony, listening beyond the notes. When we think of communication, we think of words. But words are often the least reliable part of the message. They are the conscious, edited transcript. The truth is broadcast on older, more honest frequencies, through tone, pace, rhythm, and silence. Deep listening is the art of tuning your entire being to these frequencies. Consider the music of the pause. In conversation, we often rush to fill silences, fearing the vacuum. But in the Buddhist understanding, a pause is not empty. It is sunyata, often translated as emptiness, but better understood as fertile, open potential. It is the space where the unformed thought gathers, where emotion rises to the surface, where truth finds the courage to emerge. A pressured speech that avoids pauses is often a mind fleeing from its own inner reality. A comfortable, thoughtful pause signifies a person at home in their own depth. Notice the quality of the pause. Is it a tense, held breath silence? Is it a soft, reflective stillness? The pause itself has a texture, and that texture reveals the emotional climate within. Then, there is the landscape of tone. Words are the what. Tone is the how, and the how carries the true intention. The Buddha taught the importance of right intention. Tone is intention made audible. The phrase, "I'm listening," can be an open invitation or a closed door, depending on the tonal color. Listen not just for loud or soft, but for texture. Is the voice thin and reedy, like a winter branch? This can signal anxiety, a holding back. Is it warm and rounded, like a stone smoothed by a river? This suggests ease, groundedness. Is it metallic and bright, like sunlight on a blade? This may indicate defensiveness or forced energy. Trust the wisdom of your own body. Where do you feel the tone? A genuine, warm tone might relax your shoulders. A hostile, sharp tone might knot your stomach. Your somatic response is your first and most honest interpretation. Finally, perceive the rhythm of being. Every person has a unique cadence, a psychic tempo. A change in this rhythm is a significant internal event. A smooth, flowing rhythm that suddenly becomes jagged and staccato often reveals irritation, impatience, or a mind closing down. A normally quick rhythm that slows to a deep, resonant flow can indicate a drop into sincerity, sadness, or profound thought. When two people's rhythms naturally align, when they speak at a similar pace, when their pauses harmonize, it is a nonverbal signal of deep rapport, a conversation not just of minds, but of nervous systems. A sudden, discordant break in a previously shared rhythm is a clear sign something has changed. An internal boundary has been crossed, a memory triggered, an emotion stirred. I learned the power of this unspoken symphony not from a teacher, but from a stray dog. I was living in a small hermitage, and a thin, wary dog began to appear at the edge of the woods. I would put out food, but he would not approach if I was there. Words were useless. So, I began to practice. I would sit on the step, very still, and simply exist. I breathed slowly. I moved with a soft, predictable rhythm. I made no sudden gestures. For days, he just watched. Then, he began to match my rhythm. When I was still, he was still. When I gently turned my head, he would cock his. My tone was my body language, soft, non-threatening, consistent. I was communicating through my own regulated state of being. One evening, as the light faded, he walked slowly across the clearing, not looking at me directly, and lay down a few feet away. He had not heard a convincing argument. He had felt the safety of my presence through the symphony of my stillness, my pace, my rhythm. He listened to my being, not to any words I could have offered. This is the foundation of listening. It is the calibration of your own energy to become a safe, receptive space. Let us continue our journey into understanding. We have calmed the waters of our own mind. We have begun to listen to the silent symphony that plays beneath words. Now, from this place of inner stillness and receptive listening, we can begin to observe the next great text, the body as a living sutra, the silent language of form and gesture. The Buddha's own posture under the Bodhi tree was not an accident. His seated stillness was an expression of an unmoving mind, a body in perfect harmony with its intention. In Buddhist philosophy, the body, rupa, is not separate from the mind, nama. They are two aspects of one flowing stream of consciousness. Every thought, every emotion, creates a ripple in this stream, manifesting as subtle, or not so subtle, shifts in the physical form. To read the body is not to spy, but to read this sacred scripture of the inner life, written in the language of tension, release, alignment, and flow. Begin not with isolated signs, but with the whole landscape. Observe the postural atmosphere. Take in the totality of a person's physical presence before you dissect its parts. Does the body project an energy of expansion or contraction? Of openness or defense? A body that is collapsed inward, shoulders curled, chest sunken, head lowered, speaks of a withdrawing energy. This could be sadness, introspection, fatigue, or shame. It is a physical closing of the gates. A body that is puffed outward, chest thrust, shoulders wide, chin elevated, projects an energy of occupation. This can be confidence, but it can also be aggression, pride, or a need to dominate the space. Then there is the balanced posture, upright yet relaxed, grounded yet light. This is the posture of presence, where the body is neither fleeing nor fighting, but simply, calmly, being here. It is a body at home in itself, and therefore, a safe space for connection. Now, bring your softened gaze to the eyes, the gateways and the guardians. In traditional iconography, the Buddha's eyes are often depicted as half-closed or downcast. This is not disregard for the world, but the ultimate seeing, an inward gaze that comprehends the outer. The eyes are where our inner light meets the world. Sustained, gentle eye contact is one of the most profound offerings we can make. It says, "My light is here, meeting yours. I see you." But a fixed, unblinking stare is not connection, it is consumption or challenge. It seeks to overpower. Averted eyes are one of the most commonly misread signals. In many cultures, lowering one's gaze is a sign of deference and respect. More universally, averted eyes often indicate a turning inward, toward thought, memory, or emotion. The person is looking at an inner landscape, not avoiding an outer truth. The darting, restless eye, however, usually mirrors a restless mind, one that is scanning for threat, for exit, for distraction from internal discomfort. Consider the mouth. The portal of expression. A genuine smile is a full-body event. It engages the orbicularis oculi muscles, crinkling the skin around the eyes into what we call crow's feet. This is the Duchenne smile, and it is largely involuntary, a true surrender to joy. A social or polite smile involves only the zygomatic muscles around the mouth. The eyes remain unchanged, like still pools. This smile is a curtain, politely drawn. But pay deep attention to the asymmetrical expression. A smirk, a half smile, one side of the mouth lifting while the other remains neutral. This often reveals a conflict, an emotion held in check, a cynical thought, a feeling that is not yet fully owned or integrated. The mouth is betraying the mind's ambivalence. The hands and arms are our most honest ambassadors. They often act out what the heart cannot yet say. Open palms, facing upward or outward, are a primordial, cross-cultural signal of non-threat, honesty, and offering. See, I come with empty hands. I have nothing to hide. Palms pressed down on a table or one's knees can signal a desire to settle, to stabilize, to assert control over a situation. Crossed arms are famously read as defensiveness, and often they are, a physical barricade. But they can also be a gesture of self-comfort, a way of holding oneself together when feeling vulnerable or cold. The key is in the context and the accompanying signals. Are the shoulders hunched and the face tight? Then it is likely defense. Is the body otherwise relaxed, the face thoughtful? It may simply be a comfortable position. Then there are the micro-gestures, the whispered truths. These are the small, often repetitive movements that escape conscious control, the twisting of a ring, the tapping of a foot, the stroking of the neck, the brief touch to the lips. These are not random. They are discharges of nervous energy. They are the body's way of self-soothing, of regulating an internal state that is anxious, excited, or uncertain. A person giving a speech may smooth their tie not because it is crooked, but because the action grounds their nervous energy. These micro-gestures are the subtitles to the main film of behavior. Let me illustrate with an original story. I once knew a master calligrapher, Mr. Chen. His work was famed for its breathtaking tranquility. People would watch him for hours, hoping to absorb his calm. One day, I was privileged to watch him prepare. For a full hour, he did not touch a brush. He sat before the empty rice paper. He meditated. Then, he began to grind his ink, a slow, circular, relentless motion. His face was a mask of serene focus. But I noticed his left foot, tucked beneath him. It was not still. The very tip of his toe was tracing an invisible, frantic, complex pattern on the floor mat. A stark, silent counterpoint to the serene motion of his hands. That frantic toe was the truth. It was the release valve for the immense creative pressure, the intensity of focus that his serene demeanor contained. The calm was real, but it was a practiced mastery over a powerful inner current. The body could not contain the entire energy, the excess escaped through that tiny, dancing toe. To understand Mr. Chen was to see both the still hands and the dancing foot. The mastered surface and the powerful, contained current beneath. This brings us to the beautiful phenomenon of mirroring, the unconscious dance of rapport. When two people are in deep connection, a subtle, nonverbal synchrony often emerges. It is not mimicry. Mimicry is a conscious, and often clumsy, copy. Mirroring is an unconscious, biological resonance. It is the body's way of saying, I am with you. We are in sync. You may see two friends lean forward simultaneously to make a point. You may see a couple mirror each other's hand gestures across a table. This is the nervous system seeking harmony. You can observe this as a gentle gauge of connection. In a conversation, if you consciously adopt an open, relaxed posture and, over time, the other person's body language subtly aligns with yours, it is a sign of growing rapport. A sustained mismatch can indicate disconnect or discomfort. But the most telling moment is the break in the mirror. If two people have been subtly synchronized and one suddenly turns away, crosses their arms, or leans back while the other remains engaged, it is a clear, nonverbal signal. An internal shift has occurred. A boundary has been felt, a disagreement has formed, or discomfort has arisen. The dance has paused. Remember, however, the foundation of stillness. This mirroring must arise naturally from genuine presence. If you attempt to forcibly mirror someone to ingratiate yourself, the lack of authenticity will often be felt. It will feel like manipulation, not connection. The goal is not to choreograph a dance, but to be so fully present that if a dance arises, it is a spontaneous duet of mutual understanding. From reading the silent scripture of the body, we are now prepared to take the most profound step, the step out of our own skin. Let us go deeper. We have learned to still our own minds, to listen to the unspoken symphony, and to read the living scripture of the body. These are acts of profound observation. But observation, by itself, can remain cold, analytical, a scientist dissecting a phenomenon. To truly understand, we must cross a bridge. We must move from seeing to feeling, from observation to communion. This is the heart of our practice, the bridge of empathy, walking in another's inner weather. Empathy is not sympathy. Sympathy says, I feel sorry for you from over here. Empathy says, I am coming over to where you are, to feel what it's like there. It is the conscious, courageous act of imaginative immersion. This is the very essence of the Buddhist teaching on karuna, or compassion. Compassion is empathy in action. It begins with the ability to feel, however briefly, the texture of another's suffering or joy as if it were brushing against your own soul. The Buddha taught that the fundamental root of suffering is ignorance, ignorance of the interconnected nature of all things. Empathy is the direct antidote to this ignorance. It is the practical realization of interconnection. When you truly empathize, the artificial boundary between self and other softens. You are not a separate island observing a distant storm, you are feeling the change in atmospheric pressure that precedes the rain. How do we build this bridge? It begins with a decision, the suspension of self. In conversation, our ego's default setting is autobiographical. Someone shares a story, and our mind instantly scrambles for a matching file from our own experience. That's just like when this hijacks the moment. It turns their vulnerability into a launching pad for our own narrative. To empathize, we must consciously silence this reflex. We must say to ourselves, for these next moments, this space is not about me. It is a sanctuary for their experience. We hold our own story quietly in our lap, giving our full attention to the story being unfolded before us. Next, we practice validation, not solution. Our modern mind is a fixer. We see pain and our instinct is to grab a toolbox. But not all pain needs fixing, most of it simply needs witnessing. Empathetic validation is the act of acknowledging the reality of another's emotional state without judgment, minimization, or immediate repair. Phrases like, "That sounds incredibly painful," or "I can feel the weight of that as you describe it," or simply, "I'm here with you in this," are not passive. They are powerful affirmations. They say, your emotional reality is valid. It exists. I perceive it, and I am not turning away. This validation can be more healing than any piece of advice, for it makes the person feel truly seen in their distress, which is often the core of what they are seeking. Then, we learn to ask heart questions. Move beyond the factual, investigative questions, what happened next, to inquiries that invite emotional exploration. What was that like for you, inside? Where do you feel that feeling in your body right now? What does this situation mean to your heart? These questions do not interrogate, they invite. They show the other person that you are interested not just in the plot of their story, but in the experience of the protagonist, which is them. Let me share an original story about empathy's power. Years ago, I volunteered at a hospice. There was a man, Leo, a former steelworker, who was terminally ill. He was angry, bitter, sharp, pushing everyone away with a gruff exterior. Nurses found him difficult. One afternoon, I was in his room, not to cheer him up, but simply to sit. He was glaring out the window. Useless, he muttered, not to me, but to the world. I didn't offer platitudes. I followed his gaze. I saw a young father teaching his son to ride a bike in the parking lot, wobbling, falling, laughing. I felt a pang. A sharp, sweet, painful mix of joy for them and sorrow for what Leo was losing. I didn't speak my feeling. I spoke what I sensed in him. Softly, I said, "It must be so hard to see that, all that life going on, when yours feels like it's being taken away." He didn't look at me. His jaw worked. A single, hard tear tracked through his stubble. He nodded, just once. The armor didn't fall off, but a crack appeared. He later told a nurse, that monk, he didn't try to polish the rust. He saw it. I had not solved his anger. I had simply named its source, the profound, unfair grief of missing a future, and in naming it, acknowledged its right to exist. That is empathy. It does not erase the pain, it lights a candle beside it so the person does not have to sit in the dark alone. From this deep well of empathetic feeling flows our next faculty, intuition, the whisper of the integrated mind. Intuition is not magic. It is not a psychic bolt from the blue. It is the quiet voice of your subconscious mind, which has been tirelessly processing data your conscious mind missed. It has noted the micro-expression that flashed for a fraction of a second. It has registered the slight tremor in a voice you didn't consciously hear. It has calculated the dissonance between a smiling mouth and tense shoulders. Your subconscious integrates all these subtle signals and delivers a summary conclusion to your awareness as a gut feeling, sense, or a knowing. Think of your conscious mind as a narrow beam flashlight, illuminating only what you directly focus on. Your subconscious is the vast, dark room itself, sensing heat, movement, and sound from every corner. Intuition is the room whispering to the flashlight holder, turn left. Something is there. The more you consciously practice stillness, deep listening, body reading, and empathy, the richer the data stream for your subconscious, and the more accurate and trustworthy your intuitive whispers become. That sudden feeling that something is off during a friendly conversation, or the warm certainty that someone is genuinely trustworthy despite a rough exterior, these are your inner wisdom speaking. However, intuition must be held with humility and tempered by compassion. Your intuition might whisper, "She is hiding great sadness." This is not a fact to be declared. It is a hypothesis to be approached with gentle, empathetic curiosity. Compassion then guides you to softly ask, "You seem a little quiet today. Is everything okay?" rather than stating, "I can tell you're very sad." The first is an invitation, the second is an invasion. I learned to trust intuition through a simple, profound mistake. I was leading a small meditation group. A new member, Anya, participated with intense, almost ferocious focus. My intuition whispered, "This is effort, not ease. This is striving." But my conscious mind overruled it. She is just dedicated, I thought. One day, after a particularly silent session, she broke down in tears of frustration. "I'm trying so hard to get it right, to be peaceful, and it's not working," she cried. My intuition had been correct. It was striving born of anxiety, not devotion born of peace. I had ignored the whisper because it didn't fit my positive narrative. I learned that intuition often speaks the raw, unvarnished truth that our conscious, social minds want to polish. We must learn to trust the whisper, not as an absolute command, but as the most valuable clue in our compassionate investigation. Now, equipped with empathy as our compass and intuition as our guide, we must ensure our journey is grounded in wisdom and ethics. We have traveled far. We have cultivated inner stillness, honed our perception, and built the bridge of empathetic feeling. Now we arrive at the most critical crossroad. Every power requires a container of wisdom, else it becomes a force of harm. The ability to perceive deeply, to sense the unspoken currents in another human being, is a profound power. To wield it without an ethical framework is spiritual theft. It turns understanding into surveillance, empathy into manipulation, and connection into conquest. The Buddha's Noble Eightfold Path provides this essential container. It begins with right view, which we've cultivated as stillness and clear seeing, and is immediately guided by right intention. Our intention must be purified. Why do you wish to understand people? Is your motive rooted in lobha, greed, dosa, aversion, or moha, delusion, to gain advantage, to avoid harm, to feel superior? Or is it rooted in the wholesome intentions of renunciation, letting go of ego, goodwill, metta, and compassion, karuna? Our practice must be built upon three ethical pillars, drawn from the heart of the Dharma. The first pillar, respect for sovereignty. Every person is the sole ruler of their inner kingdom. You are, at best, an invited guest. Perceiving a hidden sadness, a secret joy, or a private fear does not grant you a visa to that kingdom. It grants you the responsibility to approach the gates with reverence. You may knock gently. I sense you might be carrying something. I'm here if you'd ever like to talk. If the gates do not open, you bow and retreat. You hold a compassionate space from a respectful distance. Your perception is not a search warrant. To force entry with your insights, I know you're angry, just admit it, is a violation. It is the ego using wisdom as a battering ram. True understanding always respects the other's right to privacy, to their own timing, to their own process of revelation. The second pillar. The motive of compassionate service. Use your insights to alleviate suffering, not to create it or to serve your own ends. If you sense a colleague's insecurity in a meeting, the compassionate use of that knowledge is to later offer genuine, private encouragement, not to publicly exploit that weakness to make your own point seem stronger. If you feel a friend is lying to protect a fragile sense of self, you respond with gentleness that gives them a graceful path to truth, not with a gotcha that shames them. The Bodhisattva vow is to use all one's abilities, even perfected wisdom, for the benefit of all beings. In our daily interactions, this means using our perceptual skills to nurture safety, to build trust, and to foster healing. The third pillar, radical humility and the primacy of their truth. You are always interpreting, not decoding. Your reading is an educated, compassionate hypothesis, not an absolute, divine truth. The other person is the ultimate authority on their own inner experience. You must hold your perceptions lightly. If your empathetic sense tells you someone is feeling one thing, but they state they are feeling another, you must, in almost all cases, privilege their stated truth. To insist, "But I can tell you're really angry," is to tell them they do not know their own heart. It is arrogance disguised as insight. Humility means accepting that you can be wrong, that their internal reality is more complex than your perception of it, and that your role is to support, not to define. Let me share a cautionary tale from my own past, a story of ethical failure that taught me more than any success. In my earlier years of teaching, I had a student, Daniel, who was brilliant but perpetually late, his work messy and last minute. My perception, fueled by my own irritation, dosa, was clear: he was lazy, disrespectful, and lacking discipline. I read his slumped posture and averted eyes as confirmation. I intended to wake him up with a sharp, public critique of his commitment. After my rebuke, he looked at the floor, said nothing, and left. Later, another student approached me, hesitant. "Master," she said, "Daniel works the night shift at the hospital to pay for his mother's medicine. He comes here directly after, often without sleep." In an instant, my entire perception shattered. What I had read as laziness was the posture of profound exhaustion. What I read as disrespect was the averted gaze of shame and helplessness. My intention had not been compassionate inquiry, it had been to punish an annoyance. I had used my perceptual skills not to see him, but to confirm my own judgment. I had violated all three pillars. I disrespected his sovereignty by publicly shaming him without understanding his context. My motive was to vent my own irritation, not to serve, and I lacked the humility to consider that my interpretation might be catastrophically wrong. I sought Daniel out and offered a sincere, humble apology. It was a searing lesson. Without right intention, the clearest perception leads to the gravest error. This ethical framework transforms our practice from a skill into a virtue. It ensures that our deepening understanding leads to deeper connection, not to separation. It makes our presence a gift, not a threat. Let us now bring this vast, quiet learning down to earth. How does one live this? How do we move from the meditation cushion into the bustling marketplace, the busy office, the family dinner table, and maintain this quality of compassionate, perceptive presence? It is in the weaving of simple, mindful rituals into the fabric of your day. This is where the Dharma meets the dust of daily life. Begin with the morning anchor, setting the intention. Upon waking, in those first soft moments of consciousness, before the day's demands crash in, take 3 conscious breaths. With each exhale, release the clinging to the dream world. With each inhale, draw in the fresh possibility of the new day. Then, silently set a simple intention. Not a goal, but a quality of being. For example, today, I will seek to understand more than to be understood. Or, today, I will meet each person as a mystery to be appreciated, not a problem to be solved. Or simply, today, I will listen with my whole body. This 2-minute ritual plants the seed. It aligns your compass to true north before you step out the door. Practice the commute meditation. Whether you are driving in traffic, riding a train, or walking through a crowd, turn this time into a laboratory of compassionate, anonymous observation. Look at the people around you. Not with staring eyes, but with a soft, peripheral gaze. See the postures, the woman hunched over her phone, her shoulders like a protective shell. See the man staring out the window, his face a landscape of quiet thought. See the impatient tapping of a foot, the gentle smile at a text message. Do not create stories. Do not judge. Simply observe the human symphony of non-verbal expression. Feel the collective energy, the rush, the fatigue, the anticipation. This practice trains your perceptual muscles without the pressure of interaction. It cultivates a sense of shared humanity, dissolving the illusion of separation. You are not a separate self moving through others, you are part of a flowing, breathing organism. Embrace the conversational pause practice. In your next few conversations, make a gentle experiment. Commit to allowing 3 natural pauses to extend for just 2 heartbeats longer than feels socially comfortable. Do not rush to fill the space. Notice what happens in that expanded silence. Does the other person use it to gather a deeper thought? Does an emotion surface in their eyes? Does your own mind become quieter, more receptive? This practice builds your tolerance for fertile silence and teaches you its value. Implement the body scan check-in. Several times a day, before a meeting, when waiting in line, after a difficult interaction, pause for 30 seconds. Close your eyes if you can. Scan your own body from the crown of your head to the soles of your feet. Where are you holding tension? Is your jaw tight? Are your shoulders up by your ears? Is your stomach knotted? Simply bring awareness to these sensations without trying to change them. This practice of self-awareness is crucial. It prevents you from projecting your own tension onto others. If you are aware that your own shoulders are hunched with stress, you are less likely to misinterpret someone else's similar posture as being about you. You clear your own instrument so you can better tune into others. Cultivate the evening reflection, harvesting the day. As the day ends, perhaps during a quiet moment before sleep, reflect not on your achievements or failures, but on the moments of human connection. Recall one interaction. Not what was said, but what was felt. What was the emotional texture of the exchange? Did you sense a hidden current? Did you successfully offer a moment of true listening? Did you misinterpret a signal? Do this without self-criticism. Do it as a gardener surveys their plot. Noticing what grew, what wilted, learning the rhythms of the soil. This reflection turns daily experience into wisdom. It closes the loop of practice. Let me share an original story of integration. I have a friend, Maya, who is a high school teacher in a challenging urban school. She felt overwhelmed, burned out by the constant behavioral issues, feeling she was failing to connect. She began to implement one simple ritual, the 2-minute threshold. Before each class, as students filed in, loud, distracted, full of adolescent energy, she would stand by the door. Instead of preparing her lesson or shushing them, she would simply look at each student as they entered. Not a demanding look, but a soft, acknowledging gaze. She would make a silent intention, "I see you." She didn't try to read them deeply in that chaos. She just practiced pure, non-judgmental recognition. Over weeks, something shifted. The energy in the room began to change. Students started to meet her gaze at the door, some with a shy smile, some with a quick nod. The defensive, collective armor began to soften. She wasn't using techniques to manage them, she was using presence to acknowledge their humanity before they even sat down. Her most disruptive student, a boy named Jamal, one day paused at the door. He didn't look at her, but muttered, "You always look at us like we're people," and walked in. For Maya, that was a profound victory. She had integrated the practice not as a tool for control, but as a foundation of respect. The understanding and the improved behavior flowed from that foundation, naturally. These rituals are not add-ons to your busy life. They are ways of being within your life. They transform mundane moments into opportunities for practice, for connection, for deepening your understanding of the beautiful, complex human dance you are part of. Let us now sit by the fireside of story. Sometimes, understanding settles not through explanation, but through the gentle unfolding of a tale. Here are a few from the tapestry of my own observations, each a small window into the art of silent understanding. Story 1, The Watchmaker's Hands. In a forgotten corner of the city, there was an old watchmaker, Elias. His shop was a cave of silent, intricate time. He spoke rarely, and when he did, it was in whispers, as if loudness might disturb the delicate gears. People found him odd, remote. I would visit just to watch him work through the glass. His face was impassive, a mask of concentration. But his hands told a different story. They moved with a tender, reverent precision. When handling a broken mainspring, his fingers were not just fixing, they were apologizing, soothing. When polishing a crystal, the sweep of his cloth was a loving caress. I realized we had all been reading the wrong text. We read his silent, stern face and saw unfriendliness. But the true man was in his hands. They were in a constant, gentle dialogue with the broken, beautiful mechanisms entrusted to him. He expressed his deepest empathy, for inanimate objects, for the fragility of time itself, through the silent language of his touch. To understand Elias was to watch his hands. They revealed the compassionate craftsman that his face chose to hide. Story 2, The Gift of the Unfinished Sentence. My grandmother, in her final years, would often trail off in mid-sentence. I remember when the lilacs by the old house, she'd say, and then her eyes would drift to the window, the sentence left hanging like a forgotten note on a piano. My family would rush to finish it for her, to help her remember. They bloomed every May, they'd chime in, kindly. But I noticed a faint flicker of disappointment on her face when they did this. One afternoon, I tried something different. When she said, "Your grandfather always wore that old gray hat when," and stopped, I didn't fill the silence. I just waited, my full attention on her drifting gaze. The silence stretched. Then, a slow, soft smile bloomed on her face, far sweeter than any memory of lilacs or hats. "He looked so handsome," she whispered, not to me, but to the ghost of him in the sunlight. By not finishing her sentence, I had not abandoned her. I had given her space to travel to the feeling, not just the fact. The unfinished sentence was not a deficit, it was the doorway to the emotion behind the memory. Deep listening sometimes means honoring the pause more than the words. Story 3, The CEO and the Bonsai. I was once invited to a corporate executive's immense, sleek penthouse office. Everything spoke of power, control, and sharp angles. The man himself was an archetype of crisp efficiency. But on a low table by the floor-to-ceiling window, there was a single, exquisite, ancient bonsai tree in a simple pot. It was gnarled, tiny, and profoundly peaceful. Throughout our meeting about workplace mindfulness, my attention kept drifting to the tree. Finally, I said, "That bonsai is a masterpiece of patience." He followed my gaze, and the entire armor of his posture changed. His shoulders dropped an inch. "It's over 100 years old," he said, his voice different, softer, weary. 7 generations of caretakers. It has survived wars, fires, neglect, and now me. He looked from the tiny, enduring tree to the vast, transient cityscape his window commanded. "I control billions of dollars," he said, almost to himself, "but I cannot control how that next branch will choose to grow. I can only provide the conditions, watch, and occasionally guide with the lightest touch." In that moment, the bonsai was not decor, it was his confession, his teacher, and the mirror of his deepest, unspoken fatigue with brute force control. The man's soul was not in the large desk, but in the small, living thing he tended with humility. Story 4. The Language of the Back. I lived for a time near a community dance studio. From my window, I could see a daily ballet class. With the music muffled, it was a silent pantomime. I began to notice something extraordinary. I could tell the seasoned dancers from the novices not by the height of their leaps, but by the expression in their backs. A novice's back would be stiff, trying to remember the sequence, the effort visible in the tense line of the spine. A master dancer's back, even in moments of incredible strength and balance, appeared soft, expressive, alive. It would curve with sorrow, arch with joy, ripple with resistance, telling the story of the dance through a language more eloquent than the limbs. It taught me that the truest emotional expression often flows through the core of the body, the spine, which we so often ignore. We look at faces and hands, but the back tells the story of burden, of grace, of carried history. A person's relationship to their own life is often written in the curvature of their spine. Story 5: The Waitress's Smile. There was a diner I frequented, owned by a woman named Rosa. She ran the place with formidable efficiency, her smile a quick, professional flash for customers. One slow Tuesday afternoon, a regular, an elderly, widowed man named Joe, came in. He ordered his usual. As Rosa set the plate down, she didn't flash her smile. She paused. She looked at him, really looked. Her face didn't move into a grin. Instead, her eyes softened, crinkling at the corners. It was a smile that didn't touch her lips, only her eyes. It lasted just a second. She gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod, and moved on. Joe, who had been staring blankly at the table, looked up at her retreating back, and a faint light came into his own eyes. He ate his meal slowly, a little less alone. That was not a service industry smile. That was a moment of pure, wordless recognition. I see your loneliness. I acknowledge you. You exist in my world. It was an act of micro-empathy, delivered through a single, silent glance. The most profound communications often have no words at all. These stories are not anomalies. They are glimpses of the silent dialogue that is always occurring beneath the noise of our lives. They remind us that understanding is often a quiet act of witnessing the truth that is already being broadcast, if only we have the eyes to see and the heart to receive. No path of understanding is walked without stumbling. To believe otherwise is delusion. We will misread. We will project our own inner weather onto the clear sky of another. We will confuse intuition with bias, empathy with enmeshment. These are not failures, they are essential lessons on the path. They are the grit that polishes the mirror of our perception. Let us explore these common pitfalls with compassion for ourselves, drawing from the Buddha's teachings on the hindrances, nirvana, those mental states that cloud our clarity. The pitfall of projection. This is the most common and insidious error. Projection is when we attribute our own unconscious feelings, thoughts, or motives to another person. It is the ego's defense mechanism, outsourcing what it cannot bear to own. The Buddha identified aversion, dosa, and craving, lobha, as primary sources of this. If you are feeling insecure in a friendship, you may project that insecurity onto your friend, interpreting their busyness as intentional neglect. If you are attracted to someone, you may project mutual interest onto their polite friendliness. Your perception is clouded by your own desire or fear. The antidote, the mindfulness we cultivated in Part 1, is your primary tool. When you have a strong read on someone, especially if it's charged with negative or overly positive emotion, pause. Breathe. Ask yourself the humble question, is this them? Or is this mine? Scan your own emotional body. What are you carrying? The practice of daily body scan check-ins makes you more familiar with your own, weather patterns, so you're less likely to mistake them for someone else's climate. The pitfall of confirmation bias. We see what we expect to see. Once we form an initial impression of someone, e.g., they are arrogant, they are kind, our mind selectively attends to evidence that confirms that belief and filters out evidence that contradicts it. This is a function of delusion, moha, a fixed view of reality. The antidote: cultivate beginner's mind, shoshin, a Zen concept. Approach each interaction as if for the first time. Consciously look for 3 pieces of evidence that contradict your existing impression of a person. If you think someone is cold, actively look for a moment of warmth, a gentle gesture, a moment of vulnerability. This disciplined practice breaks the mind's lazy habit of categorization and keeps your perception fresh and accurate. The pitfall of overinterpretation. In our enthusiasm, we can turn a single micro-gesture into a full-blown psychoanalysis. We see a crossed arm and write a narrative of deep-seated trauma. This is the intellect run amok, creating complexity where there may be simplicity. The person may just be cold. This stems from a subtle form of craving, the craving for certainty, for the aha of having figured someone out. The antidote: ground yourself in the principle of parsimony. Offer the simplest, most generous interpretation first. Assume the person is tired before assuming they are angry with you. Assume a gesture is meaningless comfort before assigning it profound symbolic weight. Use your perceptions as gentle clues, not conclusive evidence. Always return to the whole context. The pitfall of empathic distress. This occurs when empathy, unbound by mindfulness, turns into absorption. You feel another's pain so completely that you drown in it with them. You lose the compassionate distance needed to be of any help. You become a second victim instead of a safe harbor. This is well-intentioned but unskillful. The antidote: remember the metaphor of the mountain lake. You can clearly reflect the storm cloud, the other's pain, without becoming the storm. Practice loving kindness, meditation for yourself. A strong foundation of self-compassion ensures you have a stable center from which to extend empathy without being pulled into the vortex. Compassion says, I feel for you and am here to support you. Empathic distress says, I am lost in your pain with you. The former is sustainable and helpful, the latter is not. The pitfall of using insight as a weapon. This is the ethical failure we discussed, but it bears repeating in the context of pitfalls. When hurt, angry, or in conflict, there is a terrible temptation to use your perceptual skills to deliver a precise, devastating blow. I know you're doing this because you're insecure, and you're taking it out on me. This uses truth not to heal, but to wound. The antidote: this is a direct test of right intention. When you feel this urge, it is a red flag signaling that your own aversion is in the driver's seat. Stop. Do not speak from this place. Return to your mindfulness practice. Let the urge to wound pass like a storm. Only when you can reconnect with the intention of compassion, seeking to understand the root of the conflict for healing, or at least renunciation, letting go of the need to win, should you re-engage. Sometimes, not speaking your sharpest insight is the highest wisdom. Let me share a story of my own compounding errors. Early in my work as a counselor, a couple came to me, locked in bitter conflict. The wife, Clara, was verbose and critical. The husband, Ben, was silent, retreating into his shell. My initial projection, I saw my own parents. I felt a sympathy for Ben, the silent victim. My confirmation bias, I attended only to Clara's sharp words and Ben's wounded silence, seeing her as the aggressor. I overinterpreted Ben's silence as profound pain and Clara's verbosity as control. I fell into empathic distress with Ben, feeling overwhelmed by what I assumed was his helplessness. The result? I was useless. I subtly took Ben's side, which only made Clara more defensive and angry, and Ben more passive. The breakthrough came only when I confessed my confusion to my own teacher. He said, "You are listening to the content and choosing a hero. Listen to the music. What is the dance?" I returned with beginner's mind. I stopped trying to fix and just watched. And I saw it. Clara's criticism was a frantic, clumsy dance toward connection, a terrible way of saying, "Engage with me." Ben's silence was not just pain, it was a powerful, punishing withdrawal, a way of saying, "You cannot reach me." They were in a perfectly matched, agonizing dance of pursuit and distance. My projection had blinded me to the system. I had to apologize to them both for my biased view and start again, seeing the pattern, not the players. It was a humbling lesson in the multiple pitfalls that can arise when our own history and emotions are not held in careful check. These pitfalls are not signs you should stop the practice. They are the practice itself. Each time you recognize you have fallen into one, you have a moment of awakening. You clean the mirror once more. We have navigated the practical and the personal. Now, let us allow our gaze to widen, to take in the vast horizon from which these practices arise. Our journey into understanding others is not merely a psychological skill set, it is a spiritual awakening to the fundamental nature of reality as described in the deepest Buddhist teachings, shunyata, emptiness, and praditya samutpada, interdependent origination. These are not abstract philosophies. They are the very ground that makes empathy possible and gives our perception its ultimate meaning. Interdependent origination, the web of being. The Buddha taught that nothing exists in isolation. Every phenomenon arises in dependence upon a vast, complex web of causes and conditions. You are you because of your parents, your culture, the food you eat, the air you breathe, the books you've read, the traumas and joys you've experienced. The person sitting across from you is the same. A unique, dynamic convergence of countless streams of cause and effect. When you practice deep understanding, you are not analyzing a static, isolated self. You are appreciating a living, breathing process. That person's sharp tone is not an intrinsic flaw, it is the present moment fruit of a seed planted by exhaustion, a stressful commute, a childhood where loud voices meant danger, or a combination of all these and 1,000 other factors. Their generous smile is not just their nice personality, it is the blooming of seeds watered by love, security, and perhaps a beautiful sunrise they witnessed that morning. This view cultivates radical compassion and dissolves judgment. You stop seeing people as fixed entities, a rude person, a kind person, and start seeing them as unfolding weather patterns, temporary manifestations of a limitless causal web. Your anger at their behavior softens into curiosity about the conditions that produced it. This is the foundation of true empathy, feeling with the whole process of their being, not just their current emotional snapshot. Emptiness, the space for connection. Shunyata, often translated as emptiness, does not mean nothingness. It means lacking inherent, independent existence. A chair is empty of chairness. It is wood, glue, nails, design, and human intention assembled temporarily. Take those apart, and chair disappears. Similarly, a person is empty of a solid, separate self. What we call a person is a temporary assemblage of body, sensations, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness, the five aggregates, skandhas, all in constant flux. How does this inform our practice? Profoundly. When you look at someone, you are not looking at a fortress of a self to be figured out. You are looking at a flowing river. Your perception becomes fluid, flexible. You are not trying to nail down a truth about who they are, you are sensing how they are in this moment, within this confluence of conditions. This empties your observation of the weight of finality. It allows you to be wrong, to be surprised, to let them change. It creates space for them to be complex, contradictory, and human. Furthermore, if both you and the other are empty of a solid self, then the barrier between observer and observed begins to dissolve. Empathy becomes the natural state. Feeling another's pain is not a leap across a chasm between two separate islands, it is a recognition of the same water flowing around different temporary formations of sand. Your stillness and their agitation are different movements of the same ocean. Let me share an original contemplation that made this real for me. I was sitting in a crowded train station, practicing anonymous observation. I saw a young man pacing, angry, shouting into his phone. My initial, unskillful reaction was annoyance at the disturbance. Then, I applied interdependent origination. I considered the causes, the missed train on the board, the tight suit suggesting an important meeting, the cultural script that tells men anger is an acceptable expression of stress, the person on the other end of the phone who was likely not helping. I saw not an angry man, but a nexus of conditions manifesting as anger. Then, I contemplated emptiness. The anger itself was not a solid thing. It was a heat in his body, a tension in his face, a harsh sound in his throat, a story in his mind. I, the observer, was also empty, a collection of perceptions, loud noise, mental formations, this is annoying, and consciousness, all dependent on my own conditions, my desire for quiet, my meditation practice. In that moment of dual contemplation, something shifted. My annoyance vanished. A spacious, quiet compassion arose. I wasn't separate from his suffering, I was witnessing a form of it. I felt a connection, not to his story, but to the universal experience of frustration arising from unmet conditions. When he finally slammed his phone down and sat, head in hands, I didn't see a rude stranger. I saw a human being, briefly shipwrecked by circumstance. That is the power of applying these ultimate truths to a mundane moment. This view also resolves the ethical dilemma perfectly. If there is no solid, separate other to manipulate or control, then the only ethical use of understanding is to serve the interconnected web itself, to reduce suffering, to increase harmony, to polish the mirror so it may reflect reality more clearly for all. Your practice of reading people, then, is not a parlor trick. It is a training ground for enlightenment. Each time you set aside your projection to see the causes behind a behavior, you practice wisdom, prajna. Each time you feel with another's flowing experience, you practice compassion, karuna. Together, these are the two wings of the bird that carries us all to liberation. Let us now bring this wisdom into the specific arenas where understanding is most tested and most needed: our intimate relationships, our professional roles, and the sacred responsibility of guiding others. Here, the abstract becomes concrete, and our practice faces its fire. In intimate relationships, seeing the pattern, not the punchline. Romantic and close familial relationships are the ultimate crucible. Here, our projections are strongest, our triggers most sensitive. The goal here shifts from reading your partner to understanding the dance. You are no longer two separate individuals trying to communicate. You are a system, a dynamic. The most common destructive pattern is the pursuit-distance dynamic. One partner, the pursuer, seeks connection through increased demand, criticism, or need for discussion. The other, the distancer, seeks safety through withdrawal, silence, or deflection. The pursuer reads the withdrawal as rejection and pursues harder. The distancer reads the pursuit as intrusion and withdraws further. It is a vicious, agonizing cycle. Your perceptual skills are key to breaking this. Instead of getting lost in the content of the argument, you never listen. You're always nagging. Use your mindfulness to observe the pattern itself. See the dance. When you feel yourself moving into the pursuer role, voice rising, body leaning forward, heart pounding, that is your cue to do the opposite of your impulse. Instead of pursuing, pause. Create space. Soften your body. This interrupts the system. If you are the distancer and feel the walls going up, body turning away, mind going blank, seeking escape, that is your cue to do the opposite. Instead of withdrawing, offer a small gesture of connection. A touch on the arm. A simple, vulnerable sentence: "This is feeling hard for me right now." This changes the music of the dance. You are using self-awareness to break an unconscious, co-created pattern. This is advanced, relational mind reading, reading the system you are both creating. In leadership and mentorship, seeing potential, not just performance. A true leader, in the Buddhist sense, is a Kalyanamitta. A good friend or spiritual companion. Your role is not to control, but to see and nurture the potential in others. Your perceptual skills allow you to see not just what an employee or mentor does, but who they are and what they could become. This means looking past the surface behavior to the underlying condition. Is an employee's missed deadline a sign of laziness, or is it a sign of overwhelm, lack of clarity, or a personal crisis? Your ability to listen deeply and observe their body language, the slumped shoulders of defeat, the anxious fidget of confusion, will tell you. Address the condition, not just the outcome. I notice this project seems to be stalled. What part of it is feeling most challenging? This opens a door for support rather than issuing a verdict. Furthermore, see their strengths even when they don't. Notice the micro-gestures of passion when they talk about a certain aspect of their work. Point it out. I noticed your eyes light up when you were discussing the design phase. That seems to be an area of real strength for you. This kind of perception, used ethically, is empowering. It helps people see themselves through the clear mirror of your attentive, caring gaze. You are not manipulating them toward a goal, you are helping them recognize and water their own seeds of potential. In parenthood, listening to the being, not just the behavior. A child, especially a young one, is a pure stream of nonverbal communication. Their body and actions are their primary language. A tantrum is not a bad behavior to be squashed, it is a desperate, dysregulated communication of an unmet need, an overwhelming feeling, or a frustrated will. Your practice here is to become a detective of the heart, not a judge of actions. Before reacting to the outburst, pause. Kneel down to their level. Observe. Is the crying one of fatigue, rubbing eyes, clumsy movements? Is it overstimulation, hands over ears, turning away from noise? Is it hunger, frustration, or a need for connection? Your calm, observant presence amid their storm is the greatest teaching you can offer. It teaches them emotional regulation by modeling it. By accurately reading their unmet need and responding to that, you're so frustrated the tower fell. That's hard. Rather than to the behavior, stop crying, you build a deep bond of trust. They learn that their inner world is seen, valid, and can be communicated in healthier ways. You are helping them translate the raw language of their being. Let me share an original story of applied wisdom in leadership. I was advising the head of a nonprofit, Elena, who was brilliant but burning out her team. She complained they lacked initiative. In a meeting, I watched her. Every time a team member offered an idea, Elena's face would remain neutral, but her fingers would perform a rapid, tiny drumming on her notebook, a micro-gesture of impatience. Then, she would improve the idea with her own. The team's body language was clear, they would shrink back, eyes lowering. They were not lacking ideas, they were being subtly, non-verbally told their ideas were not good enough. I shared this observation with Elena privately. She was stunned. She had no conscious awareness of her drumming fingers. We worked on her replacing that gesture with a conscious, open palm gesture and a practice of saying only, "Tell me more about that," before adding her thoughts. The change in the team's energy was dramatic. Within weeks, they were offering more, and better, ideas. Elena was not a bad leader, she was a leader whose unconscious, impatient energy was broadcasting a message that stifled the very initiative she desired. By reading her own nonverbal impact, she transformed her leadership. In all these roles, the principle is the same: move from seeing the problem in the other to understanding the pattern or condition that contains you both. Your perceptual skills become tools for systemic healing, empowerment, and deep connection. We have come to the end of our long journey together, from the first moments of cultivating inner stillness to the vast contemplations of interconnectedness. We have navigated the practical, the personal, the pitfalls, and the profound. Now, let us integrate. Let this final part be a gentle synthesizing, a weaving of all these threads into a single tapestry you can wear as you move through your world. Remember, this is not a linear course to be completed. It is a circle of practice to be entered, a cycle that deepens with each turn. You will move through its phases again and again. Stillness prepares the ground. Listening tunes the instrument. Observation reads the text. Empathy crosses the bridge. Ethics provides the compass. Integration is the walking of the path. There is no final mastery, only a more fluent, compassionate, and humble engagement with the mystery of the other. Let me leave you with a final, original parable, a story that holds the essence of all we have discussed. The parable of the two gardens. Imagine two neighbors. The first neighbor, Anya, was a meticulous botanist. She could name every plant, diagnose every disease, and prescribe the exact treatment. She would look over the fence at her neighbor's garden, Leo's, and see only problems. That rose has black spot. That soil is too acidic. That tree is planted too shallow. She would call out advice, frustrated that Leo didn't follow it. Her garden was perfect, but sterile. Leo, the second neighbor, spent less time diagnosing and more time being in his garden. He would sit with a cup of tea and just watch. He noticed which plants leaned toward the morning sun. He saw where the butterflies liked to rest. He felt the dampness of the soil under his fingers. He didn't see weeds, he saw resilient plants that had found their own way into his plot, and he sometimes let them be. When a plant struggled, he didn't just treat it, he wondered about it. Was it thirsty? Lonely? Crowded? He responded to its condition, not its category. His garden was not botanically perfect. It was wild, lush, teeming with life, and utterly joyful. Anya saw objects to be fixed. Leo saw a living, breathing community to be relationship with. Anya used knowledge to control. Leo used attention to connect. Our practice of understanding people is not about becoming Anya, the perfect diagnostician of human behavior. It is about becoming Leo. It is about shifting from a mindset of analysis to one of communion. It is about sitting with the mystery of another person with a cup of tea in your heart, watching, feeling, appreciating the unique, wild, and beautiful ecosystem of their being. You may offer water when you sense thirst, or shade when you sense scorching. But you do so as a fellow participant in the garden, not as its manager. So, as we part ways in this formal teaching, I offer you a commitment to gentle seeing. You might say it to yourself each morning. Today, I will seek to understand, not to conclude. I will listen to the silence between the words. I will read the body's scripture with respectful eyes. I will feel with the heart of empathy, but stand on the ground of my own being. I will use whatever I perceive to ease suffering, never to cause it. I will remember that the one I seek to understand is also me, in another form, under another sky. I will be a gardener of connection. Thank you for your profound attention. Thank you for your willingness to look within so that you may see beyond. This has been Monk's Temple. May the stillness you have cultivated here ripple out into all your encounters. May you see and be seen. May you know the deep peace of true understanding. Walk gently. Be well.